Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Joe Szymanski. Thank you to everyone who's viewing tonight, and welcome to the first show of Tough Talk, Elections Daily's first opinionated news show / podcast. You obviously know who I am. I am Joe Szymanski. I am one of the main chiefs on the site. I am the deputy director of our elections team, and I am also the head of the interviews team on the site. But with me today, our topic today will be discussing something that everyone's been on the mind of lately because 2020 is over, but we're already all focused on 2021. And of course, the biggest state will be Virginia. With me tonight, I have the chair of the College Republicans Federation of Virginia, Ian Waite. I also have with me the chair of the College Democrats of Virginia, Erica Kelly. Ian, Erica, I want to thank you both for coming on with me tonight.
Thank you.
Pleasure. Thank you, Joe.
Okay. Ian, how we do this, we're going to have 3 general questions. We're also going to have 2 individualized questions. But this is an opinion show. We're going to have these guys go back and forth a little bit. But Ian, we're going to start with you here with the first generalized question. So the first kind of generalized topic here is Virginia now a blue state? Obviously, after the results that came in after 2020, we saw double-digit victories for both now President-elect Joe Biden and incumbent Senator Mark Warner. Republicans also failed to flip back either the 7th or the 2nd district in Virginia, which were the 2 competitive congressional districts, and also failed to make up any ground in the 10th. So, Ian, like we said, we're going to start with you. Do you think Virginia is now a solidly blue state, or do you think there is a way for the Republican Party to kind of rebound here and make sure that they can be competitive in the state again?
Absolutely. Well, first, let me just say thank you for having us on today. I've been following elections daily since I met you last year, and I have absolutely enjoyed every post, every article that I've had a chance to read. I know this is a big step for you all, so I'm honored to be here on the first podcast. With that being said, to answer your question, I do not believe that Virginia is a firmly blue state yet. It clearly is trending that way, and we have our work cut out ahead of us to kind of change the tide here. But I would not say that we are squarely a blue state yet. When you look at what the state legislature was comprised of prior to 2017, Republicans in the House of Delegates had a pretty solid majority in the Senate, and we were knocking on the door of a supermajority in the House of Delegates. And over the course of one election in 2017, that changed very rapidly. Actually, the night of, we thought we had lost the majority in the House of Delegates. After the recount process, we found out that crucial delegates like Tim Hugo in Northern Virginia pulled their races out, and we kept a very slim majority. Of course, we lost it in 2019 in both houses. There's a number of factors that play into that, right? One that everyone always wants to point to is shifts in demographics, and I think that plays a part of it, sure, but I think that that's an overblown part of it, to be honest. Some of it is the political affiliation of the president. You know, Virginia has a pretty long history of electing governors that are of the opposite political party to the president. It's a little practical joke we like to play on America. And I think when you have a controversial president like President Trump, that was felt down ballot pretty heavily. For a lot of those state legislative races. A lot of those races were successfully nationalized and in terms of the way the campaigns were run. And so that impacted us, especially when you consider a lot of the suburban neighborhoods where President Trump can struggle and Democrats are able to take advantage. But to me, those aren't even the biggest factors. The biggest factor has been, in many ways, the collapse of the state party, the inability of our state party in the Virginia GOP to really organize itself and do what needs to be done to get our candidates elected. I say that because I myself am a member of the party. I, as chairman of the College Republican Federation, I sit on State Central and State Central Exec. I'm a part of the guiding governing body of the Republican Party of Virginia, and I'm very dissatisfied with what we've seen. We have a new chairman now, and there's a lot of possibilities here as he settles in. I'm excited for the future potential here, but our short-term history here since 2017 has been pretty rough.
That is true. But you mentioned that Virginia has a history of electing governors to the opposite party. That trend, though, was pretty heavily bucked in 2013, though. Republicans nominated Ken Cuccinelli via convention, something that was controversial to a lot of people because the Republicans had generally well-liked and popular and slightly more moderate Lieutenant Governor Bill Bolling, who was expected to take the jump. It did not happen due to the rules of the convention. And people kind of look back at 2013 and say that was kind of a sign that Virginia has moved away. Why do you think in 2021 that this is going to be the year that's kind of all going to kind of come swinging back a little bit?
Absolutely. We had, it's not a perfect trend, right? But even in 2013, Ken Cuccinelli, if I remember correctly, only lost by about 0.8%, right? I don't know. I know he lost by something like that, and then Ed Gillespie lost by like 1.4%. I may have flipped those numbers, but it was a very slim margin, is what I remember. And he was still a conservative firebrand candidate. So to deliver an election even that close, I think surprised a lot of people. I think, let me put it to you this way: I had a conversation with the state delegate recently. I won't, for his sake, I won't give his name right now, but he remembers going to the party in the early 2000s and saying that if the Democrats put the legwork into Virginia, they could very well make some progress here that they don't realize quite yet. And so he was kind of urging the party to get its act together and to really prepare for that moment, because eventually the Democrats are going to figure it out. And they have figured it out. They very clearly, they are better funded. Their political technology, I would say, probably has an advantage over ours, although we're really improving there pretty quickly. And their organization, they have a series of outside organizations that are playing a key role in the grassroots work to elect their candidates. Their state party is doing everything right, and we are not ready. We have not historically been ready to come to bat. I do think 2021 is a potential tipping point, and the reason why is because the Democrat caucus is becoming more and more progressive. When you look at the state Senate, for instance, popular legislation that is relatively conservative legislation, things like right to work, for instance, in Virginia, those were not defended as a result of Republican votes. It was conservative Democrat senators who delivered us those victories. And those senators are either retiring or they're getting primaried. Very proudly so, I think Ms. Kelly would say. She's very proud that they're getting primaried. But what we see from our perspective, and what allows us to rally our base, is that we get to look at some of those proposals from the more progressive candidates and say that we don't think that these are necessarily in touch with Virginians. And I don't want to take up too much time, elaborate on what I mean by that as we continue tonight. But I think the issues themselves are really going to define this election. And there's a great possibility that if we nominate the right candidates, we're going to have Republicans that can speak to those issues.
Okay. Now, Erica, we're going to give the same question to you here, of course. Obviously, I know you want to counter this. Like I mentioned, double-digit wins for both statewide candidates in 2020 for Democrats. Why do you think Virginia is now solidly in the Democrats' column for the foreseeable future?
I think I might surprise you, Joe, when I say no. I think it is as long as we earn it. And I think that the emphasis there is on earning it. I know this is kind of a controversial opinion, but I think that Virginia Democrats actually benefit from the fact that there are elections every single year, because it means that our organizing infrastructure never leaves the state. Every other state party has this issue where they have to start from the ground up every 2 to 4 years to make the effort. We benefit from the fact that we are in those communities really consistently every single year. I think the fact that Democrats are having really productive primaries really contributes to that, because we have organizing going on practically every single year without stop. I can't think of the last time that there was a down period where I wasn't interning or consulting on a campaign. I do want to be careful, though. I don't want us to get too confident. I don't want us to get too comfortable with our recent success. I think we can celebrate them. I think we can celebrate the communities that delivered us those double-digit wins. And I'm really proud of the work that we've done. But the moment that we take any of it for granted is the moment that we lose the state of Virginia. And I would point to a couple of key demographics for that. First of all, turnout in Northern Virginia. We have to be concerned about complacency under a Biden administration, where we got a Democrat in the White House now. We don't have to turn out as consistently as we have in the past. So making sure that we are reinforcing our high turnout in Northern Virginia, and then defending our victories in the suburbs, especially in and around Richmond. That's a growing community, and it's a community that's solidly in our column. We've seen ticket splitting amongst particularly white women in the suburbs around Richmond. And I think those are absolutely voters that we could lose in the next 10 years. I think that Virginia very much acts on a pendulum, kind of what Ian was referring to. And while I am really confident in our ability to defend our solid blue performance these past couple years, I really want to emphasize that we will only be a blue state so long as Democrats continue to be successful, and so long as we protect ourselves from some of the failures that, frankly, the state party on our counterparts have experienced.
Okay, then I'm going to push you here a little bit more like I pushed Ian. I'm going to bring up another election, 2005. Okay. Democrats took the governorship again that year. Tim Kaine won in one of the tightest gubernatorial elections of modern history. But Republicans that year were able to take both the lieutenant governorships with the aforementioned Bill Bolling, and they also took the attorney general's office with Bob McDonnell, who he himself eventually became governor. Obviously, the talk of the Republican side for the governor's ticket has been well known. Amanda Chase is apparently, after many conversations, is now apparently seeking the Republican nomination at convention. But it appears to most viewers that it seems like Republicans have what most would consider a decent field for both the lieutenant governorship and the attorney general's office. Are you at all concerned about potentially a 2005 scenario happening again in 2021, in which Virginia's Democrats are able to hold on to the governor's office, but potentially lose one or both of the lower level statewide offices?
I think that's a wonderful question, but I am not concerned about that. So I did warn quite a great deal in my last response about the possibility of us losing Virginia, but I don't think that's going to be an issue until about 4 to 10 years down the road at a minimum. In 2021, I am absolutely anticipating a really decisive victory for Democrats here in the state of Virginia, and I do not have concerns about the possibility of a split ticket for statewide offices in terms of having success at the top or at the bottom. I think part of that is Virginia Democrats were not as well organized in 2005 as they are today. I also think that the Office of Attorney General was not as politicized then as it is today. We obviously have a primary going on that front, but we have a 2-term incumbent who has delivered for Virginians and represented our state well at the national level, that I think would make it really difficult for voters to justify selecting differing visions for the Commonwealth. I think that we're going to see a straight ticket Democrat administration elected in 2021.
Okay, and then that actually works perfectly into my first of the individualized questions for you here, Erica.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, if you look at the candidates list for Virginia this year, obviously the big name that's come back in is Terry McAuliffe, but we're going to get to him a little bit later here in the show.
Okay.
But if you look at the candidates though here, for Governor, Jennifer Carroll Foy would probably be what most would consider the main opposition to Terry McAuliffe in the Democratic primary there. For the Lieutenant Governor's race, Hala Ayala, Delegate Elizabeth Guzman, Sean Perryman. Those are some of the big names that are running for Lieutenant Governor. And you have, of course, as you mentioned, the incumbent Attorney General, Mark Herring. Well, he is facing a primary for Jay Jones, who I will be interviewing this upcoming Tuesday for Elections Daily. What all those candidates have in common is that they are all from Northern Virginia. Now, you mentioned, of course, the importance of turnout in Northern Virginia, and that is, of course, incredibly crucial to Democratic victories in Virginia nowadays, is making sure that those heavy populous, heavily Democratic counties turn out. But are you concerned, though, at all that, and I'll just make something up here, say it's a Jennifer Carroll Foy, Hala Ayala, and a Mark Herring ticket. All three of those candidates would be Northern Virginian candidates. Would you at all be concerned that maybe that is a geographical imbalance on the ticket? The fact that all three of those candidates from Northern Virginia, there'd be no one from Virginia Beach, there'd be no one from the Roanoke area, there'd be no one from the Richmond area that would be able to kind of represent, those important voters, and maybe that it would kind of leave you open to attack that, maybe the Democrats are getting too Northern Virginia focused.
So I do want to highlight some of our other candidates that are contending in the primary. You did mention Delegate Jay Jones. I do want to make sure that we're clear that Jay Jones is from Southeastern Virginia and is from Tidewater. And I don't think that his primary against Mark Herring should be discounted, especially because it seems like it's really just going to be the two of them, which will really allow him to build some notability there. I also don't want to discount Delegate Rasool from Roanoke in Southwestern Virginia. As someone from a conservative part of the state, as you can see my Luria sign behind me, and from Southeastern Virginia, I do think that it's really important that we do have geographic representation on our ticket. I think that is a priority amongst many for us to consider as our voters go to the polls, because we will be electing via a primary. However, I don't believe that it would hurt us in the long run. I think that Democrats will benefit from those really strong investments we've made across the state of Virginia, year to year to year here, and that we can pick up those maybe lack of hometown names. I don't think that's going to hurt us too much, but I do want to give a shout out to our folks that are running from other portions of Virginia.
Okay. It's something that I didn't want to, of course, discount people like Delegate Rasool and Delegate Jones. Obviously, they are, of course, two other major candidates in this race, and for sure. But Ian, I'm going to get to your first individual question here. And I think it's a topic that everyone who would be a Republican in and outside of Virginia wants to talk about, and that is the concern with conventions. Obviously, Virginia Republicans at their local meeting this past December passed a plan that would see the nominating process for lieutenant governor, for governor, and for attorney general be by convention instead of primary. And for you, you came out strongly against this. You came out and you said, I voted against this motion on the principle that conventions provide significant burdens of participation for college students, working class Virginians, young families, service members, and many more. If we want to win in November, we'll need the support of these communities. It seems counterintuitive to expect support from these communities in the general election when we effectively cut them out of the selection process from the beginning. It is for this reason that I believe the Republican Party of Virginia is obligated to ensure that all interested Virginia Republicans have their means to participate in the nomination process despite the significant burdens presently before them. So obviously that's your own thoughts about it. But there's been a lot of talk that one of the big drags on the Republican Party of Virginia for the last decade has been their willingness to go and use conventions. So what I really want to hear you talk about is kind of what your thoughts are on conventions, and what do you think in the future going past 2021 should the Republican Party of Virginia really kind of do about them, and how they should handle them coming up in topics like this?
Yeah, look, you did your homework, Joe. You pulled up the tweets and everything, and I have not made my frustrations. I've not left my frustrations with conventions go unnoticed. I was very proud to vote for a primary. Every college Republican, or my first and second vice chair who sit on the state central committee, they were also proud to vote for a primary. Look, I think at the end of the day, the candidates in the race shouldn't have an impact on the nomination method. Our nomination method should serve our interests well. And to me, there's a lot of arguments for a primary, whether it's data collection or building a coalition. To me, the fact of the matter is it boils down simply to the idea that if you are a Virginia Republican, you should be able to participate in the nomination process, period. So I talked about the concerns that I have with my constituents being college students with their ability to participate. Let me clarify for everybody, because I feel like people hear about conventions and they hear how corrupt they are, but a lot of people don't understand how they work exactly. So I'm going to clarify. In order to participate in a convention, you first need to figure out when your local unit is having their mass meeting so you can sign up to be a delegate. A lot of Republicans that I've talked to, for instance, I worked on Daniel Gates' senatorial campaign this past cycle. I met a lot of Republicans who were relatively new to Virginia, relatively new to Republican politics, and they've been pushed here because they didn't like what they saw from the left. They thought the Democrat Party was going too far to the left, and so they kind of found a new home in the Republican Party. A lot of these people don't know what their local unit committee is. A lot of these people don't quite understand what mass meetings are. And I don't think that those people should be prevented from participating in this process, and we don't do enough to educate them as to how to get involved, right? But you have to go to this unit. Once you figure out what your unit is, where they meet, all that information, you go to this mass meeting, you sign up to be a delegate. For certain offices, they make you pay for inter-party offices. I don't think that would be the case this year. I think we're going to decide not to do that. But some district committees, for instance, have done that. Some units have so many people sign up to be a delegate that they don't have enough spots, and so you need to then campaign to be a delegate. That's pretty infrequent. There's usually a lot of spots available. It doesn't happen very often, but it has been known to happen sometimes. So people that have never run a campaign before now have to campaign to be a delegate, and they may be brand new to this process. And then once that's all squared away at that meeting, months later, you have to reserve a weekend to go to this convention. Usually the convention is only one day, but it takes all day because it takes multiple ballots for each office. You hear the speeches, all the shenanigans that go on with parliamentary procedure, with challenging delegate credentials, all the corrupt stuff that you hear about. That takes hours to resolve. And so you go there to participate. Usually it's on a Saturday, but you have to get lodging for Friday night to be there early in the morning on Saturday. And if it goes long enough, you may need lodging Saturday night because you don't have the ability to drive home that night if you're exhausted or if you live too far away. So right there, we have two significant time and financial restraints to participation that to me are ridiculous. That to me should disqualify the convention process, certainly for this year at the very least. This is a critical year for us. We need to bring these communities in to participate in the nomination process, and we're just not doing that with the convention process. Now, you mentioned that December meeting. That was an 8-hour meeting where the convention process was just one thing that we took up. It was a very large agenda. And as a result, we didn't get to cover everything. So we still have another meeting coming up in a couple of weeks where we work out the finer details. Here's the kicker. There are people that voted for a convention that are now saying, well, I voted for an unassembled convention. They didn't. The motion was for a convention. If we want to have an unassembled convention, that is going to require us to amend the party plan with a 2/3 vote. Now, if COVID continues on its current trajectory, we'll probably get to that 2/3 number. But I'm thinking back to last year when we were planning our state convention. And there are people that were opposed to us doing our state convention in an unassembled capacity because they had other ideas as to how we could do a virtual convention or other ideas as to how we could do an in-person convention elsewhere. I mean, just crazy other theories that were being kicked around that just were not going to work. And I fear that if we put this up for a vote again, we may have some of those ideas come to the forefront again, and we may not get the votes that we need to pass an unassembled convention. Other people were saying that they didn't vote for a convention at all, that they were voting for a party canvas, which that's more colloquially known as a firehouse primary. A lot of people haven't heard of a firehouse primary. It's essentially a mix between an unassembled convention and a primary, but that's a totally separate process in the convention. So there was a lot of confusion surrounding that vote. We pushed for motion to reconsider. That unfortunately failed. But I'm hoping that as we go into this next meeting where we work out some of the finer details, we can address some of these sources of confusion, that we can pick a better selection nomination. But yeah, I am ardently against conventions. I think I've made that abundantly clear. I've made clear my concerns with them regarding participation. And I'd be happy to continue talking about them, but I've been going on for a while, so I'll pass it along.
Yeah, of course. So we're going to move on to our second general topic here, which means, Ian, we'll start with you. So the state Senate in Virginia, which is the closest body right now, it's only decided, I believe, by one seat away from a tie. It's 26-24 in favor of Democrats. That body, of course, is not up this year. They are only on an every 4-year cycle, which means they will not be up again until 2023. Mm-hmm. But, of course, the big fight this year also in Virginia will be about the state house. Ian, do you think your party can take back the House of Delegates in Virginia, and where do you see that pathway being?
Absolutely. Well, look, it's an uphill battle the same way that statewide elections will be this year, but anything is possible. And I think at the very least, we have an opportunity to make some headway. There are some very heavy-hitting Democrats that are leaving the House of Delegates to run for those statewide offices, which present opportunities for us, the first of which will come on January 5th. The question is, can we pick the right candidates to get us there? And that to me is a very critical question. When you look at Republican success down ballot in 2020, it was fueled by women, minorities, and veterans. And the same can be said at our state elections this past cycle in 2019. Jen Kiggins, a woman veteran, won a very close race down in Southeast Virginia. Siobhan Donovan, a woman healthcare professional, won her highly contested race, because they understood their community and they were very good with messaging, and it was a refreshing take on Republican politics. DJ Jordan in Northern Virginia did not win his state delegate race, but he ran a very good race, a very close race. And he now is, of course, running for lieutenant governor, so he's kind of off the table. But, we have a great opportunity here if we find the right candidates, people that connect with their community, to turn the tide, and I hope we do take advantage of that.
Okay, and first of all, I'm going to correct you. Mr. Jordan recently announced that he was actually going to run for the 31st district.
Gotcha. Okay, my apologies.
Lieutenant governor. And second of all, there's the question of redrawn maps. Obviously, redistricting will hopefully occur in Virginia in 2021. We don't necessarily know for sure yet due to the uncertainty of the census. Let's say we still expect that it does happen. Do you think that hurts you more than helps you? Because if redistricting does happen, theoretically, that could draw even more seats that would go into Northern Virginia territory, just because of how big the population boom has been there. And that, obviously, as we've said, Northern Virginia has become this Democratic bastion of votes. Are you concerned at all that if it happens like that, are you concerned at all that the chances of you taking the House will just kind of go poof and go away?
Now, look, we passed the First Amendment this past year on the ballot initiative. I'm looking forward to kind of a fair redistricting process. And I think that process will be handled appropriately. And I trust that, again, if we can source the right candidates, we can win anywhere. It's a matter of finding the right people that are connected to their community and making sure that they are messaging on the issues that win. And this is not incredibly new for us. Like I said, we have blueprints on how to do this. It's just a matter of getting there. That, to me, is going to be the biggest key.
Okay, Eric, and of course the same question to you, of course. Do you think the GOP can take back the state house for, and I'll add on this here, but kind of what is the Democrats' plan to kind of, to defend some of these open seats? Obviously, we already mentioned Elizabeth Guzman, Hala Ayala, Sam Rasool, Jay Jones. Some of these people are not. Jay Jones represents a Norfolk area seat that would not be competitive anyway, but I would think people like Elizabeth Guzman's seat, especially if DJ Jordan is the Republican nominee again, that will certainly be a competitive seat. You expect them to go after some seats in the Richmond area suburbs and in some of the Virginia Beach area suburbs that they lost in 2019. So do you think it's possible? And what is kind of the Democratic Party plan to defend those seats and to potentially even gain a couple, if the map drawing goes your way?
Yeah, this is a wonderful question. I'm glad we get a chance to focus on the issues in our General Assembly. I'm, again, not concerned about the ability of Democrats to hold on to our majority in the State House come 2021. Of course, I'm expecting a hard fight from Republicans in a couple of those key districts that you mentioned. But I think that we have a lot to campaign on. The era of do nothing Democrats as an attack, it just simply doesn't work here in Virginia. We got to work this year. We passed really meaningful reforms in education, in healthcare, in criminal and racial justice that are meaningful for our communities, especially in Northern Virginia, the Richmond suburbs, and Tidewater. And I think that right now we're doing a better job about messaging on those victories than we have in the past. I think we can just look to last week, or this week, actually, my bad, when every other state in this country is cutting their budget to pieces. And meanwhile, Northam, with the support of the exceptional budget work of our state house and state senate, we're proposing investments, landmark investments in really key issues for suburban women, for Tidewater, and for Northern Virginia. So I think the possibility of a favorable map for us, which I want to be clear, that favorable map will be a result of just happenstance by the fact of population changes in Northern Virginia. Unlike Republicans, we're not going to create a racially gerrymandered map. So if this map is favorable to us, it's by chance. Will that be to our benefit? Possibly. But I really do stand by our success in the state house and our ability to effectively message on those issues. And I think on January 5th, that first test, we're going to see success. And I would credit that to these wonderful delegates. Yes, they're turning their attention to statewide, but I think they're going to make really meaningful efforts to secure victories in their previous seats.
Okay, and I didn't have this written down, but I think it's important for us to talk about it. The Amendment 1 passing in Virginia. Erica, I'm going to start with you here because there was a lot of splitting among Democrats about this amendment. Questions about would it be fair to racial minorities in Virginia? Is this the right way forward? Does this maybe give us too little control in the process, or does it give too much control to what is a majority Republican appointed Virginia Supreme Court? I mean, those are the questions I know I heard a lot of. I go to college in the state. I go to George Mason University. You heard those questions all the time when people were talking about the amendment. So I'm going to get to both of you here on this issue. But Erica, I'll start with you. Kind of, what's your thought process on this? Is this the right pathway forward, or should have something else been done to limit the effects of gerrymandering instead?
I came out very staunchly against Amendment 1. I side with delegates like Josh Cole and Jennifer Carroll Foy in the State House who said, this is not going to address the inequities in our system that we claim that it will. I think that there's points to be made about removing legislators from the process altogether. I think we all saw the report that was put out by VPAP this week that showed who exactly is applying to this commission. And it is overwhelmingly independently wealthy, older white men from Northern Virginia, effectively erasing the communities that are most harmed by biased redistricting from the process. And these are concerns that many delegates and state senators brought up in the beginning of the year. They were ignored. And I hate to say I told you so, but that's what's happened. The amendment did pass. It's the system we have to work with now. I do want to make it clear, though, it is still exceptionally better than the system that we had before. This is still a fairer, more just system. Could it be better? Yes. And we'll have the opportunity to rectify that in the future. But for right now, I think we are going to do our best to make sure that this is a more equitable system than we've seen in the past. I think that VPAP's report was definitely a bit of a shock to the system that a lot of Virginia Democrats needed to see. Just because you're publicizing something doesn't mean it's reaching the communities that it needs to. And I have heard of and seen a lot of the work that a lot of really great legislative assistants and chiefs of staff on the Democratic caucus side are doing to make sure that the communities that are important in this conversation are being included. And I'm hopeful that we're going to see a diversification of the applicant pool for this state commission.
Okay, Ian, of course, the same question to you. I know you were on the opposite side of this issue. You were very, very heavily in support of Amendment 1. Lots of Republicans were for it, even though but there was some question about it, whether Republicans would support in the end, whether they were educated enough on the issue. That didn't turn out to be a problem. It went past, as we said, very heavily. But I also want to get your take and your opinion on it. Why you thought it was the best way forward for Virginia? Why you think it's going to continue to be the best way forward for Virginia? And kind of why it's the best way past the old system.
Yeah, look, redistricting is an incredibly complicated issue for a number of reasons. I think the bottom line is the gerrymandering that we've seen, not just in Virginia, but in all across the nation, has been absolutely abysmal from both parties. And I think most Americans, and definitely Virginians, are ready to move past that era into an era where we're having productive conversations as to handle redistricting. Is your end goal to create competitive seats? Is your end goal to create seats that put together communities with common interests? There's a lot of different factors that need to be taken into consideration when you're going through this process, and politics simply should not be one. So I'm very pleased to see that we're taking a step in the right direction. I understand that there were concerns about how this amendment functions, about how the redistricting process will be handled. But again, I think that this is without a doubt a step in the right direction. And I feel very confident that once we navigate this process, we will see a better method of redistricting for the Commonwealth of Virginia.
Okay, obviously gerrymandering is going to continue to be a topic going forward. It's going to be a topic not just in Virginia, but throughout America. Maybe what we see in Virginia can be used as at least part of a way forward for the rest of the country on this issue as we kind of deal with the issue of fair maps throughout the nation. But we're going to move on here. Erica, we're going to start with you, of course, on the individualized questions here. We mentioned him already before, but of course, the big name that everyone has talked about, which is why it has become such a hot topic this past week, Terry McAuliffe is back. He is once again running for governor. He is once again running as a Democrat. We've already brought him up a couple times. Obviously, he was the guy who kind of shook everything up when he won in an off year against the usual norms in 2013 when he won as a Democrat. But there's been a lot of questions, though, about whether former Governor McAuliffe still represents the wider Democratic Party in Virginia. Miss Kelly, I know you personally have kind of signed on against former Governor McAuliffe. I know you are in support of now former delegate Jennifer Carroll Foy. And I know that there are a lot of younger, more activist Virginians who, like yourself, feel like Mr. McAuliffe is kind of a relic of the past Virginia that we don't need to move forward. And of course, Miss Foy and Mr. McAuliffe are not the only two candidates in the race. There's obviously State Senator Jennifer McClellan, who is in the race. And there's also we're not going to mention the other name because the other name deserves no mention considering the allegations against him. But there is also, of course, the kind of the wild card in this race for Democrats, the kind of like how Amanda Chase is almost kind of the wild card for Republicans. There is kind of this wild card in that Delegate Lee Carter, who has become well known for his membership with the Democratic Socialists of America and what most would kind of consider almost a two online presence sometimes. He is also considering a run for governor. So, my main question to you is Terry McAuliffe really the way forward if Democrats of Virginia kind of want to make progress in the state?
Thank you for the question, Joe. First, I want to thank you for choosing to omit one of the candidates. I personally will continue to ignore his candidacy, and I appreciate that you've chosen to do the same. Addressing Terry McAuliffe first, I want to be sure that I'm not delegitimizing the concerns that he and his supporters have and the reason why they might personally view him as a way forward. But I hope that they hear me when I say that I appreciate him for his service. I understand why he sees himself as a savior of Virginia, and I can't blame him for wanting to help us during our time of need. this has been a difficult year for many Virginians. However, I don't believe that he's the way forward for Virginia. Our issues and our concerns today are very different and more extreme than what they were 10 years ago when he first ran to be the governor of Virginia. And I think that it's really important that we are prioritizing candidates who are qualified to legislate on racial and economic justice. And, you know, that's why I really do want to support the Black women that are running in this race. And so while I personally will be voting for Jennifer Carroll Foy, I also love to share positive comments about Senator McClellan. And this has nothing to do with identity politics. This has everything to do with the value of lived experience. And as Black women in Virginia, they are more qualified than Terry McAuliffe to lead us through a time of racial reconciliation, of reform of our criminal justice system, and all of the intersectional issues that branch out from that. And I appreciate the service that Terry McAuliffe has continually provided for not only our state, but also for the Democratic Party. He made really meaningful investments in college Democrats when he was chair of the DNC, and we are appreciative of him for that. But we think that it's really important that we stop being told to wait. And that's
okay,
what right now.
Yeah, and I mean, don't worry, I'm gonna push Ian on his wildcard candidate too. But I do want to kind of get your opinion on what the addition of Lee Carter into the race would do, and do you think that he could kind of bring a little bit of a damper onto the race? Obviously, like I said, he does have an incredibly online presence that is to some people very confrontational and somewhat off-putting. So do you think if he does enter into the race, he has filed for PACs, he has filed to do paperwork if he were to get in. He hasn't made a final decision yet. But do you think his entry would be a net negative or net positive for the primary as a whole if he were to get in?
I wouldn't necessarily consider it a net negative for the Democratic Party. I don't think it would really have that negative of an impact on the quality of our primary or on the likely winners. I don't consider him to be a serious contender. I have been very public about discouraging him from running, kind of for the same reasons that I discouraged Terry McAuliffe from running. Women in this country, specifically women of color and Black women, have been told to wait their turn for a really long time. And it's very frustrating, especially when our issues are the ones that are on the line. And those lived experiences really are valuable. I think about the fact that Jennifer Carroll Foy was born and raised in Petersburg, Virginia, which is a part of our state that's been left behind. And while Lee Carter has really valuable life experience as a veteran that he can bring to the race, I don't think that him being a little bit more to the left of Jennifer Carroll Foy really adds that much. And I think that if his goal is to push the party to the left, because he certainly will not secure a nomination, just being frank, as someone who does identify as a leftist and has views that are to the left of Jennifer Carroll Foy, if he wants to move the party to the left, if that is his goal, I think that he should play a more active role in the caucus in the state house. I think there's an opportunity for him to be as successful as Representative AOC or Ayanna Pressley, some national figures who have made a really big name for themselves, but have also put forth the legislation and the politicking behind the scenes to have some of their policy points really come to fruition and become normalized. I don't think that Lee Carter has done his opinions or himself the favors with his combative attitude. He has forced staffers to quit. He has made people in Young Democrats uncomfortable with his aggressiveness on occasion. And by no means do I wish to slander him. I just have serious concerns about his viability as a statewide candidate. And I personally would request that he stay in the House and do more work there instead.
Okay. And now it's, of course, my turn to push Ian on the Republicans' well-known, incredibly vitriolic candidate that is actually in the race as well, even though it seemed like that she would not be. So, Ian, my main question to you is going to be whether, of course, Virginia Republicans can gain ground in Northern Virginia in 2021. But I also want to talk about there is, of course, one candidate who, if she were to gain the nomination, that will not happen. The candidacy of Amanda Chase for governor. She is a state senator from Chesterfield, for those if you somehow have not heard her name in the past month. Miss Chase has been both kicked out of the Senate GOP caucus, and she has also been kicked out of her local Republican Party, but she is seeking the Republican nomination through the convention for governor. Miss Chase has a lot of questions about herself, Just to name a few, Ms. Chase has recently told the president that he should input martial law to keep in power in the idea of this false notion that this election was rigged through mail-in ballots. She has also been photographed with people aligning themselves with the false, current conspiracy movement known as QAnon. Ms. Chase has also aligned herself with some people who were part of a potential plot to. I'm trying to figure out the right word here because it's a damaging thing. But two people who went up to Philadelphia, which is only an hour and a half from me, with guns to a voting location where they were counting ballots. She has also been in connection with those two people. So I'll get to the Northern Virginia part first. But first, how harmful do you think Amanda Chase winning the Republican nomination? Not even if she decides to just say screw it and go ahead and run as an independent, but how damaging would that be? Not just short term, but long term for the Republican Party. If someone like Amanda Chase, who clearly does not have the morals or the rights to lead a major party in this country in any sort of fashion, if she were to get the nomination, kind of what's the blowback there first?
Tell me how you really feel, Joe. No. Yeah, look, when she first made the announcement after the state central vote, I was very public about my dissatisfaction with her decision. Typically, though, now that she's announced that she's running for the Republican contest, I think she made the announcement a couple of days ago now. Typically, as a party leader, certainly within the college Republicans, we're typically kind of restricted in our ability to speak on candidates during the primary. At least we're asked to kind of not take too many sides. But here's the thing. When State Senator Mark Obenshain and the leader, former majority leader, now minority leader, Tommy Norment, decide that they're going to come out against a candidate, I think that provides enough political cover to speak candidly about how we feel. The fact of the matter is, I think Senator Chase would set our party back by a decade, at least. Look, she seems to have aligned herself to a large extent with a wider movement in the Virginia GOP, and it's a minority, but it is a vocal minority, to eliminate the voice of college Republicans and young Republicans and the Virginia Federation of Republican Women from the State Central Committee. She's aligned herself with a lot of the other people that you've highlighted. I won't go down that laundry list again, but look, in doing all of these things, what she really seeks to do is relegate our party to permanent minority status in Virginia, and that is unacceptable. That is not something that we can allow to happen. Look, Virginians like, in many ways, boring candidates. We like boring issues. Our education system is consistently in the top 5 in the nation. We are the best state in the country for business. We have a AAA bond rating and billions of dollars in the bank for an emergency fund. These are things that come from practical, level-headed leadership. They don't come from demagogues. And so if Virginians look at this candidacy, and I think they're going to reject in the primary. I do not think she'll get the nomination, but in the event that she does, I really do think Virginians statewide are going to absolutely mop the floor with her, because again, she does not speak to the issues that matter to everyday Virginians. Virginians want to know how we're going to keep their community safe, how we're going to improve their schools, how we're going to ensure that they have a good paying job. She does not speak to those issues. She's a ridiculous candidate, and yeah, I mean, I don't want to take up too much time again, but it's a ridiculous candidacy in my opinion. I just don't think she's going to get the nomination.
No, we have more than enough time, so I'm gonna let you speak here a little bit more. If you don't want to answer this, that's okay, because I understand in your position that you might not be able to. But would you? I know you, and I know a lot of other college Republicans have come out against Amanda Chase online, very publicly. I mean, I have too. I mean, if any of you people follow me on Twitter, you've seen that I've come out very heavily against Amanda Chase in my what I consider now Virginia to be my second home state. If Amanda Chase were somehow to become the Republican nominee through convention, would you support her candidacy, one, with resources and with time and the people that she needs, or would you encourage, say, someone like a Denver Riggleman to run an independent campaign and to at least have an option for Virginia Republicans who would clearly be uncomfortable with Miss Senator Chase's candidacy?
Look, I firmly believe Senator Chase will not be the nominee, plain and simple. Kurt Cox, is the former Speaker of the House, is a very strong candidate. He's a very strong legislative record. Pete Snyder, Glenn Youngkin. We have a lot of very dynamic candidates that are either already running or will run here in the near future that I think provide us a lot of great alternatives in this election. And I don't even want to entertain the possibility of her being the nominee. I don't think it's a realistic possibility. And I think simply at the end of the day, again, Virginia Republicans are going to want to hear about the issues that matter to us most. And I don't think she speaks to those issues.
Joe, is it all right if I do chime in here?
Oh, hey, that's the point of the show. That's the point of the show. Erica, absolutely go ahead and chime in here on this.
I do want to push back against Mr. Waite's notion that there is no chance she wins the nomination. I think in the past 4 years, we've seen time and time again when the Virginia Republican primary base is given the opportunity to choose, they choose the most extreme choice. I think if we look at Bob Good, a man who launched his candidacy because a very conservative congressman had the audacity to marry a gay couple who has run far to the right of Representative Riggleman on social issues, on economic issues, on racial issues. They chose that candidate, and they chose it through a rigged convention. There are many power players in the Republican Party who I think will support Amanda Chase's nomination because they genuinely believe that the only reason Virginia Republicans are losing is because they haven't nominated a true conservative yet. And unfortunately, Amanda Chase is the person they see in that case. I think if we look back to one of the last major statewide elections, when we look at Corey Stewart, a man who made comments that tangoed with white supremacy. He kind of tiptoed around racial issues that left many Hispanic and Black Virginians really uncomfortable. And he ran against a more moderate candidate. Virginia conservatives have consistently chosen the most extreme candidate, and I think that our college Republican counterparts would do well to consider their worst case scenario because I think it is a possible and likely one, if I'm being honest.
That's certainly a statement to be made. I will at least give Mr. Waite some credit myself personally, because I know Mr. Waite was very public in his work for Denver Riggleman at that convention. He himself called it a rigged convention, I believe, online in the end. I will at least give him that, but I will give credit to you though that you are right, and I will allow Mr. Waite some time to answer back here. But Mr. Waite, Erica is right here though, at the very least, that Virginia Republicans within the past, at least going back to the Ken Cuccinelli decision over Bill Bowling, have seemingly struggled. Really, other than the nomination of Ed Gillespie in 2014, other than that. And maybe you could argue 2017, at the very least, choosing Mr. Gillespie over Corey Stewart in 2017 for governor. Other than the two times they've nominated Ed Gillespie since 2014, Republicans have really kind of struggled with either finding serious candidates or picking someone who is the right candidate for the race. So obviously you wanted to say something. I'll let you answer back. But this is honestly a fair concern for a lot of people considering the prior history of the past 8 years. Yeah, no, and I understand exactly where you're coming from. I would note, though, that a lot of those conventions that Ms. Kelly mentioned, the 5th District, for instance, is a great example. Those were not an above-board process, right? The convention was picked for one location in a district that is larger than New Jersey. It was picked in Bob Good's backyard. And the fact of the matter is that the committee members received payouts as a result of their vote in determining the convention method. That is something that we ended at the state level in our latest statewide convention. We passed a party plan amendment to end pay-to-play politics. So I think that we can expect a more above-board statewide process. And I think making it a statewide process or statewide convention helps in that regard. And I would also point out that a lot of the conservative activists that we've seen back really conservative candidates are not necessarily going to work for Amanda Chase. We've seen a lot of these activists, and I don't want to say anything right now because a lot of people haven't announced yet, and there's some things that aren't official. But I'll say from what I've heard so far, I think what you're going to see is a lot of the conservative activists are rallying around different candidates. And it may not be Kurt Cox right now, but like I said, you're going to see other conservatives jump into this race that speak more to, again, mainstream Republican values than does Senator Chase. And a lot of these people it might surprise you how little support she gets
from party operatives. I think that's the word I was looking for, is party operatives. You've seen a lot of conservative grassroots operatives that have backed these conservative candidates in the past that Eric has mentioned that are not necessarily coming in the defense of Amanda Chase.
All right.
I'm sorry, I did forget one.
Go ahead.
To clarify that. This convention is going to happen in the summer. Usually the unit meetings happen in February and March. My term ends in February. So at the end of my term, as I kind of wind down, and once I am no longer chairman of the College Republican Federation, my top priority is going to be ensuring that college Republicans go to their mass meetings and get involved. I want you to understand that I'm not taking a passive stance here against Amanda Chase. I don't think she's going to be the nominee because I think the right organizations are going to do the work to ensure that she is not the nominee. If she does happen to be the nominee, we will cross that bridge when we get there. But I'm not going to entertain a hypothetical that I really do not think is likely to happen.
Well, that's certainly fair to say so, Ian. Obviously, it's going to be one of the main storylines that we are going to watch across the country. When this is kind of just the fact of why we're talking about Virginia 2021 tonight is because people who follow this stuff and people across America, because of Virginia's off-year elections and because compared to its neighbor of New Jersey, which is incredibly solidly blue and has no fun for us at all, Virginia usually at least provides some storylines. So the eyes of the nation will be upon us. We will see. And, we have a couple months until these moments, but we are going to see. We are going to find out. We are going to see what happens. But we're going to end our show tonight with an open question to each of you. Of course, Ian, we start with you first as we have all the general questions tonight. But finally, this is an easy one. Just give us a little spiel to the viewers, to the people. Why should the people of Virginia vote for your party up and down the ballot this year? Just, give us your reasons why, both of you. Ian, we'll start with you. Go right ahead.
Yeah, this is something that I've kind of alluded to already, but I think we have a lot of great candidates in this primary process that are going to represent a diverse array of geographic regions in the Commonwealth of Virginia, and they're going to speak to issues that Virginians care about. If they're going to talk about how Republican budgets during Terry McAuliffe's administration outperformed McAuliffe's proposals in terms of education funding and teacher pay. They're going to talk about how best to responsibly move forward with healthcare reform. Right? They're going to talk about the importance of making this a Commonwealth that is strong for business and strong for workers alike. I think there's just a wide number of issues that Republicans are going to speak to in this election that are really going to address the key things that Virginians day-to-day have to deal with, and they're going to do so in a better capacity than our counterparts. All
right. Ms. Kelly, of course, the final word will go to you tonight. You go ahead and give us your little spiel now.
Thank you, and I will try to keep it brief. I want to break this up into 2 points. I want to talk about overarching issues where we talk about the arc of justice is long, or the arc of history is long, always bending towards justice. And then I want to talk about pocketbook issues, because when Mr. Waite speaks to issues that Virginians really care about, I do want to talk about Virginia's performance in that regard as it pertains to democratic leadership. So first of all, if you want to elect representatives and leaders that believe in democracy and are willing to defend it publicly and consistently, you're looking to elect Democrats in the year 2021. It took days, weeks, and some still haven't come out and said consistently on the Republican side, statewide or otherwise here in Virginia, that the November 2020 election was free and fair. I think that's a really big issue. I'm going to keep it focused on my party, so I'll let that point trail off. I think if you're concerned about issues like climate change, as a daughter of Tidewater, Virginia, I have seen what coastal flooding has done to my community year after year. I think we look at Norfolk Naval Base, the largest naval base in the world. They've been raising the alarm for the past 10 years about the issue of climate change as it pertains to national security. I think about the way that federal defense spending supports almost 70% of my regional economy. And frankly, Republicans are not going to take action on climate change here in Virginia. So if you don't want to see the economy of Tidewater absolutely wrecked, you need to elect leaders that are going to make really big investments in combating climate change and letting Virginia lead the way forward. And finally, when we talk about pocketbook issues, Virginians are flourishing financially. We have really benefited from Democratic leadership for almost 10 years now that has consistently produced balanced or surplus budgets. Virginia is making unprecedented investments in education. I think it's interesting that Mr. Waite would like the Republicans to take credit for that. Sure, they were great House leaders at that point in time, but frankly, we've taken the baton and we've run with it, and we've delivered in really big ways for Virginians. And if you want us to continue to be successful, I just want Virginians to be mindful that the past 8 years of investment and prosperity have happened under Democratic leadership, and I don't believe there's a reason to change that now. I want to thank you again for having me on the show this evening. I appreciate Mr. Waite's participation, and I want to wish him all the best during his party's strenuous primary.
Yeah, and so yeah, I guess that is where we'll end it. Folks, thank you for watching the first episode of Tough Talk. Obviously, we do have the holiday period coming up with Christmas and New Year's Eve. Eve's coming up on the next 2 Thursdays, so there will not be shows on either of those nights. But once we get into January and the new year of 2021, which will hopefully be much better than the year 2020 has been for any of us, we will start seeing more stuff like this, more people from outside of our usual elections daily folks. We are going to see more people like Mr. Waite, like Miss Kelly, who are from outside of our window and who are going to come in and who are going to miss something like we had tonight, a good, formal, informative debate that we talked about a state that is going to be incredibly important in the upcoming year. Ian, Erica, I just want to thank you both for coming on tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Tough Talk. I am Joe Szymanski with Elections Daily. Thank you for watching and have a great rest.